I think there's a mix of people feeling quite nervous about reopening, and there's probably a bit of ecstasy that people will be seeing family again. And we've got a lot of whānau who live in Australia that will have the opportunity to come home and reconnect with family they haven't seen in over 2 years. I guess the level of nervousness especially exists for more vulnerable communities, which is where we're seeing projections of 1,000 cases per day. We haven't quite seen that yet in Auckland, but we're seeing a huge rise in COVID numbers given the Omicron variant. I think the other concern that people have is that there's going to be major pressure on our hospital system, and when it's hit poorer communities, it's always been pretty devastating right across the world. So mixed feelings at the moment, both of ecstasy and excitement, people coming home to New Zealand, and then those of us who live in poorer communities wondering just how impactful this will be on us.
Yeah, the government has sort of dedicated some extra funding, particularly when you talk of vulnerable communities, for the Pacific and Maori community, who among them there's been quite a lot of vaccine hesitancy. How is that going to complicate matters going forward, do you think?
Yeah, you all know that it's been really tough for many of our communities. The hesitancy was something we had to work through. Our numbers of vaccination were pretty low for a long time. And so it was dependent on local organisations, local health clinicians to really get into the community to ensure that they're talking with communities in the languages that they understand and really engaging with them so that they can trust the process. And these are communities that have historically poor relationships with public institutions, which is why it's been so important for local organisations to get in there. So we've seen just how impactful that has been. We've seen the numbers go up and people trust those local organisations. But again, when the information changes a little bit, that causes a level of concern. And so we've gone now for the booster shot, which has gone from 4 months to 3 months. As information changes, it just means that we've got to work a little bit faster on the ground to ensure that communities trust the process. But we're confident we can get there.
And of course, that's going to be pivotal, won't it, that there is high vaccination numbers in those groups, particularly because they do want to travel in and out of New Zealand and have family that want to come and visit.
Yeah, and the flow-on effect is, as we've got whānau who are returning from Australia to New Zealand, naturally we'd want to go back to the Pacific, go and visit our families back in Tonga, in Samoa, in Fiji, and we know that those island states have benefited from complete shutdowns. But as they look to reopening their borders, to our concern is if we haven't got our vaccination rates high, it means that we could in fact be taking the variants of COVID-19 into the Pacific, where their health systems are going to be really stretched if they're going to have outbreaks. And we're seeing some of that at the moment. We know that Tonga, which has just experienced a tsunami, is now is experiencing challenges in their health system with COVID. So those are all the things that we're considering here. And we're really grateful to essential workers, our border workers, our health clinicians who've done a fantastic job. And I guess what MIQ does for New Zealand as that starts to change too, is it's given us the opportunity to really understand COVID-19 and just held it up a little bit while we get to understand how these variants work.
Auckland was, of course, a city that was hit a number of times. You've decided to run for mayor. Tell us what prompted you to put your hat in the ring for the race.
Yeah, I hope that this will be a campaign based on hope. I think for Auckland, part of our challenge is we were socially distanced before COVID came along, probably socially distanced on the basis of income inequality. And I've decided to put my name in the ring for the mayoralty because I really believe it's an opportunity to really lift Aucklanders again, to get us thinking about how we support one another, ensure that there are good local jobs for everybody, and reboot the city because it's been shut down a number of times. And I think we want to lift in confidence. I love this city. It's given so much to me. I've schooled here, lived here all my life. And so I want to give back in a really unique way.
So how would you like to see the city emerge from, what we're going into our 3rd year of this pandemic?
Yeah, I want to see us more socially connected. Thousands of people have lost their jobs. So how do we encourage businesses? And thousands of businesses have fallen over as a result of COVID. So how do we encourage our small, medium-sized enterprise to reboot again? How do we ensure that people are in work and they can support their families? And then as the economy lifts, granted we've got high levels of inflation and that impacts poorer communities a lot. So we've got to look at ways to arrest some of that inflation and the impact it has on particularly food, petrol and housing prices, and then how we build a strong city. Look, you just need to look back in Australia at the house prices in Melbourne, Sydney, and parts of Brisbane, and you know that it's really high. Auckland is heading in the same direction, and we're going to lose the dream of wanting to live and play here in this city if housing affordability gets completely out of reach for both low and middle income earners. So I think there's a real opportunity to rebuild the city, give us a sense of passion and vision and confidence going forward.
And of course, people in Australia may not know, but you know, the Mayor of Auckland is a bit like the Premier of Victoria or New South Wales because of the different kind of electoral system that you have.
Yeah, so we're the biggest unitary council, so we're almost, as you say, like a state government. We're that size. Auckland is 1.7 million people. We're a population of 3.5 million. So a third of the country is here. We produce 40% of New Zealand's GDP. So we're the economic engine house of the country as well. So this is a really important city, and Auckland is the gateway into New Zealand. And so I think it's really important that people understand we're a really pivotal part of the South Pacific, and people want to come here, but it's important that we've got jobs and that we open up to the rest of the world so they can see just how great Auckland is. Maybe a few Aussies might want to come and live here too.
I think there may be a few, especially New Zealanders wanting to come home as a starting point. Great to talk, Efeso. We'll watch your campaign with interest.
Thanks so much, Bev.